So today we are going to look the detail of the Mercedes and the Chocolate Pilot by Marketing's Rhythm. As we read the story together, I want you to think about why the Chocolate Pilot wants to help those children. Why is it important? So this story was happened in 1948 after 3 years of World War II. You can think about that environment, that situation for those children in Berlin will be so difficult. One late August day, Mercedes slipped her hand under the white chickens she kept in the small courtyard garden behind her apartment building. Please that there be eggs, she wished as the silver winged planes flew above like guardian angels. But like yesterday, the day before, the chickens' nests were empty except for one small egg. Mercedes fed each chickens a worm and tried not to cry. She loved her 4 feathered pets, but Mama would not be happy. Eggs were more precious than gold in West Berlin during the Russian blockade. Tomorrow, I want an egg from each of you, she scolded the chickens and sternly, or Mama will say we cannot afford you to keep you and must have you for dinner instead. Walking up the bomb-splintered steps to her apartment, Mercedes was sure her white chickens were just too scared of the thumping planes of the airlift to lay their eggs. Night and day, they roll overhead like huge silver birds into nearby Tempelhof airfield to unload their supplies. But Mercedes would never complain about the great solemn grocery stores that everyone called raisin bomber because they carry yummy raisins to eat. They carry flour and clothing and coal too, and something else. One day, Mama read her a newspaper story about the candy that came from the plains. The story told about the wonderful American chocolate pilot, Lieutenant Gil Hafison. Every day he ran down sweets on the children who cheered the planes landing on Tempelhof runway. As Mama read, Mercedes learned how the tall, friendly pilot had talked with these children one day at the fence near the runway's end. The children didn't ask him for candy, Mama read, only sweet freedom. Still, before he had to go, he searched his pocket for gum. But he found only 2 sticks, and there were 30 children. What did he do, Mama? Mercedes asked. He split the sticks for 4 lucky children, Mama read, and the other tore silvers of the foil to smell as they sweet trees. Then, even though he knew he could get in terrible trouble, the pilot promised the children he would drop gum and candy to them from his plane. The next day, he stretched out his arm and told them to look for the wiggle of his plane's wing. That night, the pilot made small candy-filled parachutes from handkerchiefs Mama read on and dropped them in secret to the children at the airfield. The next day, he made 3 candy drops after that before his trouble began. Children's letters addressed to the chocolate pilot and Uncle Wiggly Wings began to arrive at the airfield. Then a candy bar almost hit a reporter on his head, and the colonel in charge at Tempelhof read about the pilot's secret in the newspaper. He was called. Did the colonel yell at him? Mercedes cringed. But Mama laughed and said, only a little. Then he shook his head and told him to keep dropping and keep him informed. But wouldn't he run out of candy? Mercedes asked anxiously, but Mama laughed again. People from all over America now send the pilot handkerchiefs for parachutes and so much candy that it fills 2 large railroad boxcars. Mercedes heaved a sigh of relief. May I go catch some candy at Temple Hope too, Mama? She asked hopefully. Not by yourself, sweetheart. Mama warned quickly. The streets are too dangerous with soldiers and rubble everywhere, but I promise to take you to the airfield soon to see the chocolate pilot, she said, hugging Mercedes close to her. Mercedes smelled the smoky scents that still lingered in Mama's blue dress from the time when the bomb had fallen during the war. She knew Mama cried quietly at night for Papa, who hadn't come back from the fighting. Don't worry, Mama. I will stay close when we go, she said. I will even walk with my toes in your shadow, except when I run for our candy, she added happily. A few weeks later, as Mama promised, Mercedes stood at the airfield fence with the other hopeful children above her. Thundering planes dropped out of the clouds, shaking the ground at their feet. Then a great cheer came up from the children when they spotted the wiggle of the chocolate pilot's wing. Suddenly, many small white parachutes floated down like marshmallow clouds. Yay! Mercedes ran excitedly with the other children, with her hands stretched high to capture the prize in the sky. But at the very last second, a large boy nearby reached up a little higher and grabbed the parachute drifting toward her. And oh, the look in his eyes as he bit into the silky smooth chocolate. It was all Mercedes could think about the whole sad way home. That night, listening to the sound of the plane's engines above her home, Mercedes wiped her tears. If only she had caught the chocolate, it wouldn't matter if the chickens lay eggs. The candy would make her and Mama so happy. But what could she do? Then Mercedes remembered from the newspaper that children wrote letters to the chocolate pilot. With the moon as her lamp, she got out of bed to write one too. Carefully as she had learned in school, she penned. Dear chocolate pilot, we live near the airfield at Temple Home, and our chickens think your airplanes are chicken hunks. So they became frightened when you fly over to land. They run in shelter, and some mouth with no more eggs from them. It is a big problem for us. We need eggs. But when you fly over the garden and see the white chickens, please drop some candy there and all will be okay. I don't care if you scare them. Your little friend Mercedes. Mama mailed Mercedes later the next day, quietly keeping the thought behind her lips that such a busy pilot didn't have time to make every child's dream come true. But Mercedes now waited in the garden with the white chickens every day, wishing one each angel plane above for her candy to fall from the sky. Returning to Redman Air Force Base in Frankfurt, where he slept and ate between his 3 round-trip flights into Berlin each day, Lieutenant Gil Hafferson put down a handful of letters on his coat. It was late October. For months now, Children's letters with crayon color drawings arrived for him from all over Berlin. Each week, the many letters were translated by 2 German secretaries and given to Lieutenant Hafesen. A few got his personal reply, but all the letters touched his heart. Some even made Lieutenant Hafesen laugh until he cried. A 9-year-old boy, Peter Zimmerman, wrote the chocolate palette that his legs were too short to run fast for the candy, so he drew him a map to his house and instructed, "Fly along the big canal at the second bridge, turn right. I live in the bump-out house on the corner. I will be in the backyard every day at 2 p.m. Drop it there." Lieutenant Hafesen tried to find Peter's house from the sky, but when he couldn't, he boxed up candy bar and gum and sent them to Peter's address by West Berlin post. But not before he had heard from Peter again, saying, "No chocolate yet? You are a pilot. I gave you a map. How did you guys win the war anyway?" Now on this late October day, Lieutenant Hafesen quietly opened 2 days later. One by one he read them. Then he lingered over a letter from a little girl with white chickens in her courtyard garden. He smiled and laughed and fought back a tear as he read, "We need the eggs. But when you fly over the garden and see the white chickens, please drop some candy there and all will be okay. Your little friend Mercedes." Lieutenant Hafesen softly rubbed his head. His little friend's sweet hope was as fragile as the eggs, and as precious to him as the white chickens were to her. But would he ever find the garden with the chicken? Even with Peter's map, he couldn't find his yard by the canal. As October days passed into November, a thick, soupy fog began to blanket Berlin sky. Walking home with Mama, Mercedes prayed the pilots would be safe today. She prayed too that the fog would lift so the chocolate pilot could find her chicken in the yard at last. No candy had rained down yet. Maybe he had stopped looking for the chickens. "Please don't forget me," Mercedes whispered to the white sky above. Mama saw the troubled look on Mercedes' face. She squeezed her little hand with love, but said nothing. But once inside their apartment at 15 Halfer Street, Mama couldn't wait to give Mercedes the supplies that had come for her earlier that day. It was a package mail from Tempelhof Elfeld, all neatly wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Quickly, Mercedes tore into the package. As she opened the box, the sweet smell of candy spread thick as Jane through the room. Chocolate bars! Packs of white and green mint gum, pink bubble gum too, and lifesaver rolls, colored like the rainbow. Her chocolate palette had found her at last. Mercedes saw Mama blinking back happy tears. She gave her a thick chocolate bar to eat and chose a creamy bar with nuts and caramel nuggets for herself. She split off its wrapper and peeled back the silver foil. Little by little, she bit into the dark sweetness, letting the smooth taste melt away on her tongue. With each silky bite, she closed her eyes for a second as if she had just tasted heaven. Inside the box was a letter for Mercedes. "My dear Mercedes, thank you for your small letter. Not every day I fly over your home, but surely often. I didn't know that in Hertfordshire there lives such a nice little girl. If I could fly a few rounds over Felder now, I surely will find the garden with the white chickens. But for this there is not enough time. I hope that through what is with this letter I give you a little joy. Your chocolate uncle, Gil Hafferson. The memory of this day will stay with her for the rest of her life. A few months later, in January of 1949, Lieutenant Hafferson thought of little Mercedes and Peter Zimmerman and all the children in Berlin as he flew out of Temple Hall for the very last time. It didn't seem possible that his 7-month tour of duty in the Berlin airlift had ended. He was sad to go, but as the clouds parted toward America, he smiled, knowing his candy drops to the children would go on with the help of trusted pilot friends. What Lieutenant Hafferson didn't know that day was that his story in Berlin wasn't over. Until now, after 70 years, Lieutenant Hafferson and Mercedes still get in touch with each other and they are still close friends. So in the discussion, I want you to think about a person, maybe in the past, to think about that person and think about how that person give you that light when you feel hopeless, and make the comment. Thank you for listening to this story. Mahalo.